to begin his career in Franklin County. As Mark said, I'm Rosemary Underwood. 50 years ago, Mr. Guy Fincher hired Carl Underwood, my then soon-to-be husband, to begin his career in education at the Charleston Public Schools. 50 years later, here we are, both retired teachers. In 2017, we built our home 5 miles north of Charleston in the Vesta community, 2.5 miles from the proposed site for this new prison facility. It is my privilege to have been asked to share this statement with all of you tonight. I stand before you as a concerned community member representing not only myself, but the voices of many who feel we have not been adequately heard in this process. The governor described the chosen site as a secluded location, not being in the center of any community, but close enough to have the workforce needed. However, with all due respect, this statement is not accurate. The proposed site is 6310 Highway 215, which is located 8.5 miles from the city of Charleston, with a population of 2,723 people and the Charleston School District. It's 13 miles from the Lavaca School District, 13.5 miles from the County Line School District, 25 miles from the Ozark School District, 27 miles from the Paris School District, and 27 miles from the Boonville School District. This means there are 6 school districts within less than a 30-mile radius. Given the populations within these specific zones, these rural areas are close enough and populated enough to the proposed site that a formal public hearing should have been held before the state committed millions of dollars to a project in Franklin County. Further statistics include Tucker Prison covers 4,500 acres with no residents, no schools, no business in close proximity, surrounded by fields. Cummins Prison covers 16,500 acres with no residents, no schools, no businesses, and surrounded by fields. The new proposed prison site is to be the largest in Arkansas and have 3,000 beds, only covering 815 acres, surrounded by family homes, ranches, and school districts. What is particularly troubling is that our local officials were informed about the state's proposed prison site only the afternoon before the purchase was finalized. This lack of communication raises serious questions about the transparency of this decision-making process. We are here to voice our concerns about several issues. Among these issues, we question whether the state has properly assessed the environmental impact this would make. Prisons have been known to cause pollution, potential water contamination, and cause other negative consequences that could jeopardize our community's health, safety, and way of life. One of the most vital concerns is that local water supplies could be compromised. If the state drills its own wells, it risks over-extracting groundwater, which could deplete the water table and reduce water availability. Mill Creek Mountain is known for its rocky underground terrain. If explosives are used in construction, they could damage nearby water wells that residents and farmers alike rely on, jeopardizing both water quantity and quality. A local poultry farmer in the area was recently denied a water permit. An attempt to drill for water did not yield enough water to sustain his farm operations. Moreover, we must consider the social implications of placing a prison in our area. What would a prison mean for our community safety? Our local services, such as police, fire, and medical, are not equipped to handle the added strain that a prison would bring to our communities, potentially impacting overall safety. Additionally, families of inmates may consider relocating within the Charleston School District to be closer for visitations. However, the district is not currently prepared to accommodate a potential influx of new students. If additional school staff and facilities are needed, a millage increase would be required. With budgets at all levels already stretched thin, additional tax revenue will be necessary to meet the new demands placed on our county. However, implementing new taxes would impose an unfair financial burden on residents who are already facing economic challenges. Finally, there are the people. We, the people. Some of the land on and around Mill Creek Mountain has been cherished and passed down through generations, with each family leaving a piece of their heart in this beautiful place. Many others have invested their hard work, dreams, and savings into buying land and homes here, seeking a quiet, peaceful life amidst natural beauty. This simple, modest lifestyle reflects our deep-rooted values, uniting the community in a shared commitment to love, respect, and support one another. However, the prospect of a prison being built in our midst threatens to shatter our quiet, peaceful existence. It would disrupt the way of life so many have worked hard to preserve. An overwhelming majority of us wish to hold on to our way of life. Mill Creek Mountain, along with nearby Vesta and Charleston, is more than just a place on the state's map. It's our home. These concerns are not just abstract. They directly affect the quality of life we worked hard to provide for our families. For these reasons and more, we call for a comprehensive assessment that includes environmental studies, economic analyses, and social impact evaluations before the Arkansas Board of Corrections votes on approving this 3,000-bed prison in Franklin County. Only through a thorough assessment can the board make informed decisions that ensure long-term benefits for our environment, impacted communities, economy, and peaceful way of life. We ask for the fullest attention and consideration from the Corrections Board because we truly believe that our voices, needs, and concerns are deserving of sincere understanding and thoughtful action. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to a productive discussion this evening and in the future before a final decision is made.
So we're going to get started with some of the questions that were submitted and work our way through those. As we begin that, first question was directed towards our local dignitaries. We've got Senator Gary Stubblefield here, we've got Judge Ricky Bowman here, we've got Representative John Eubanks here. Those are the three that are affected directly by this that's in your districts. So the first question was directed towards you three. And the question was, when did you first learn of Vesta being the spot or potential spot for a prison?
Can you hear me? I was notified about this place 2 days before. 2 days before they closed on the location of this site. I was called by the governor's staff, and they told me they had picked a spot, and I said, "Where is the spot?" And he said, "North of Charleston." And I said, "Charleston, Arkansas?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, are you telling me that you're closing on this before we even have a chance to sit down and talk about it?" And we got no response. So I immediately went to the governor's office the next morning, and needless to say, I had a good conversation.
Mark, I found out at 3 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon on the 29th. Wife and I were actually returning from vacation. I think I would have been notified a little bit earlier, but they couldn't get a hold of my cell phone. They finally got that. And I got the call at 3 o'clock. And as the senator said, I had no idea before then. My jaws, it dropped too. They told me the location. I said, "You couldn't have picked the worst location in Franklin County." I said, "I know that community well," but I said, "You also picked a rock pile to put it on." And so it was 3 o'clock when I found out on Tuesday afternoon before the governor made the announcement, I think on Thursday.
I, like Gary Stubblefield, was notified a week ago this past Tuesday. It was 2 days before they closed on the property, is my understanding. I also understand that they didn't have any conversations with any of the Senate or House leadership.
I'm Brian King. I represent Senate District 28. So what part of Franklin County that Senator Stubblefield don't have, I have the top part. If you go a little bit, Turner's Bend, Cass. So I was not notified at all. I did not know about it until it came out in the newspaper.
So the next question we have in was in regards to that, and that probably goes, I would imagine, to the governor's office. The question then was related to when did Vesta become a prospect spot for the prison? And I'll let whoever wants to answer that, handle that one.
Thank you for the question. Mrs. Underwood, thank you for your statement. It was very impactful and meaningful. We appreciate all of your words, and we appreciate the community's concern with regards to this prison, and that's why we're here, and we're going to stay here throughout this entire process to have these conversations moving forward with this prison. With regards to the who knew what and when, ultimately it was important for the taxpayers with regards to ensuring that there wasn't an escalation in the price and a bidding war to keep it quiet. The price of this property or any other property under consideration.
Hey guys, listen. Hey, seriously, it's going to be a long night. We won't get many questions answered. And I understand you're frustrated, but we got to.
And we're going to be very transparent with you. There were other properties.
Hey guys, Johnny, Billy, the law enforcement is here for a reason, guys. And I'm not against anybody, but they are here because if it becomes disruptive. There is room in the Franklin County Jail, and they inform me they will fill it tonight if they have to, and they don't want to do that. But we can't get answers unless we give them opportunity to speak. So we just give them the due process. We can't get answers. We can't get answers if we don't have time to let them speak. So, sorry.
I understand your concern and your mood, and I respect it, and I want you to know that. There were many other properties that were evaluated and considered with respect to the siting of this facility, and this particular piece of property was determined of those sites that were under review as the best location of the sites in consideration for selection, and ultimately that's why it was selected. And Shelby, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add with regards to some of the criteria that we looked at associated with determining a property, but I think it would be helpful if folks understood what we were looking for.
And before we get to that, though, so obviously,
but I think it would be helpful if folks understood what we were looking for.
And before we get to that, though, so obviously it was weeks before the elected officials here knew. It was obviously weeks before this became a prospective site.
That's correct. This site was under review for several months. It was a exhaustive process for reviewing sites within the state of Arkansas, across the entire state, ultimately landing on this piece of property. And elected officials locally knew days before we closed when we did the notifications, as they expressed in their testimony here before you tonight.
And if we'll get to, if you want to, that is one of the questions that was brought up was, were there studies done? Were there EPA studies done, water, service, utilities? So I think that's kind of what you mentioned Mr. Johnson might want to allude to, and that is one of the questions, is utilities and studies done as far as the property is concerned before the purchase. So if you want to go ahead and address some of those, we can do that.
And, you know, I'll let Mr. Johnson talk about some of those things, but it's clearly understood inside any location within Arkansas that there will require an investment in infrastructure, whether it be electric utilities, wastewater, or water, any potential site, to fulfill the mission of the prison being constructed there. Just like with any development, it's going to require an investment, whether it's 3,000 houses or 3,000 prison beds. There's going to be a requirement for infrastructure investment, and the state is going to invest in the infrastructure to ensure that we have what we need for that prison, which I think will inform a lot of other potential opportunities for development within this community.
Good evening, my name is Shelby Johnson. I'm the Geographic Information Officer for the state of Arkansas. My team played a role in trying to advise on some of the map information and geographic and population information about our state. And I thought what I would do is make a couple of remarks about site selection process, since you asked about that. I would like to do a quick brief history lesson going back to 2022. I would like to do a quick brief history lesson going back to 2022. The Department of Corrections and Board of Corrections had done a community outreach to the state of Arkansas back in about 2022 and had asked communities across the state of Arkansas to bring to them some potential sites where they might be able to invest in locating a new facility. And so when they issued that criteria, one of the key metrics that they established as a very fundamental criteria for what they wanted to look at was properties that were not within 60 miles of an existing correctional facility. One of the challenges, if you read the newspapers and are aware, is that those folks have a hard time filling the staffing for those existing facilities that they had, and those folks have a hard time filling the staffing for those existing facilities that they had, and they wanted to be a site or look at sites for a new facility that would be at least 60 miles away from that. When that invitation went out, there were a handful of responses in communities that did respond in the state, and those trickled in about late 2022 or 2023. And the corrections staff and the Board of Corrections looked at those potential sites that were brought to them. There were a handful of communities around the state, and none of them were viable, and none of the ones that were brought to them were met that 60-mile criteria. So we began working on looking at that criteria. When you think about the state of Arkansas and where our existing facilities are, it leaves you a little small piece of Clay County, a part of Union County, and then you have a swath that comes down from around Harrison, down through the Ozarks, down here into the River Valley, and then swings on down to Polk County and the Mean area. So when we started looking at that concept right there, which narrows a lot of this part of the state, and then we overlay on top of that the needs for the workforce. And so then we really began to focus in on the Arkansas River Valley. So we started looking in the Conway area and coming up this western part of the state. We really began to focus in on west of Russellville and this part of the state. The more homework we did, the more effort we did in looking at all of the information and the analysis, we really zeroed in on western Arkansas. Western Arkansas has a lot of different characteristics to it, primarily population, but also this part of the state is more than 60 miles from an existing facility.
So going back to the study, the impact, a lot of people's concerns were there impact studies done? Was there analysis of the land, the layout of the infrastructure? Was all that taken into consideration? Were there studies done before the purchase was made to know what we were getting into as far as purchase of the land?
There were surveys done with respect to the site location specific to workforce and infrastructure. Those studies concluded that workforce was great comparatively to many other sites. Infrastructure, as I indicated previously, was one of those areas where if there is some level of infrastructure there, but there will need to be improvements in that infrastructure to support this site.
And just to reiterate what you said, and that's something that the state is prepared to help with, is the increase in water needs. I mean, because obviously there's water systems that'll have to increase their system to do that. There's electric companies that have to do their sewer. That stuff that the state is willing to help fund those increased needs. Is that what we're looking at?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So then I think we covered the site process. Unless there's anything you guys would like to add on that, because I know that is one of the questions. How is the process? Another question that's come up in regards to that was why not like Fort Chaffee land? So there's 80 some odd thousand acres out there. Why not put it out in the middle of Fort Chaffee where it's not going to affect anybody? Can you address that question?
Again, we evaluated multiple sites across the state that were in this region. Ultimately is where that study brought us to based on workforce data and available land. And ultimately this piece of property became the one that stood out as the best location for the prison, and that's why it was selected.
There was another question, and I think you've addressed it by the fact you have to be 60 miles outside of the current facility. But there was questions about why not build onto an existing facility. Is that because we've already tapped the workforce in those areas?
Ultimately, yes, and I will defer to corrections with regards to workforce data and vacancies. But as Mr. Johnson has expressed, there's a lot of prisons that have been built in the Delta. Many of those prisons are very close together. As indicated by Ms. Underwood, they're not near houses in many occasions. Some are, but they're very near each other. So oftentimes those facilities are competing against one another for the workforce that is available in those locations, which leads to a higher vacancy rate. And I don't know if Chairman Magnus or Secretary Wallace has anything to add to that.
Thank you, Lindsay Wallace. I'm the Secretary of Corrections. Yes, thank you, Mr. Perfury. You're exactly right. A lot of our facilities are clustered together. Look at our Garner complex and our Cummins complex, and while there is a lot of land that encompasses those facilities under roof, it's not as much as you would think. It's less than 100 acres that encompass both of those. But in terms of the vacancy rate, our vacancies really peaked in our overall correctional facility in 2021. We were over 50% vacant as a department. We've made great strides, but those rural facilities that we talked about, there's plenty of land there. Why would you not just build onto that? The workforce just doesn't exist for us. And so whenever we talk about the facilities that are close by, we do steal from other facilities when we start advertising and things like that. So it's this constant kind of push and pull from one facility to another. So Mr. Perfury is exactly right. It's difficult when you've got them so close together to be able to continually build when you've got an increasing population.
Another question that's come up and a concern is the workforce. There's a lot of places looking for employees right now here. The concern is that, number one. Secondly, is it going to pull from our current law enforcement, our current schools? And that's another concern that's been brought up. Can you address? I mean, I know it's hard to read the future, but can you address that? I mean, it's concerns obviously we've got for our sake.
And I'll be glad to have Mr. Magnus. He's got a lot of law enforcement experience. If I can start just really quickly, Mr. Chairman. We have a lot of county jails that operate close to our facilities, and I agree that they struggle just like we do to hire qualified staff. But I'll give an example. Phillips County is a county jail that we're getting ready to assume operation of with a lease for them. they are fully staffed right now. They're within about 45 minutes of our East Arkansas Regional Unit, where we are facing a staffing crisis there. We are severely understaffed there. Minutes of our East Arkansas Regional Unit, where we are facing a staffing crisis there. We are severely understaffed there. But Phillips County, they are fully staffed. So to answer that, we have a lot of job opportunities for correctional officers. We have administrative staff. We have licensed social workers. We have a full variety, but some people just don't want to work in the facility. So I think that those people that want to work in local law enforcement, that want to be out in community, they're still going to want to work for your local law enforcement. I don't think we'll attract everybody just because of the salary. And I'm going to let Mr. Magnus piggyback on that.
I experienced when the North Central unit was built at Calico Rock, real similar to what we have here in Charleston in the rural community, and it did not affect the local law enforcement that significantly, say, in the rural community, and it did not affect the local law enforcement that significantly, say, after a couple of years. When it first opened, yes, but after several years it has not. It doesn't affect it today. When it first opened, yes, but after several years it has not. It doesn't affect it today.
Another question that was brought up, and I think it was kind of addressed in those opening comments, but it was a concern about crime. Obviously, it's not the ones incarcerated that are the concern. It's those that are coming in to maybe visit those that are incarcerated. That is a concern a lot in the area, is increased crime around the prison. I don't know which side would like to address that. That is obviously a major concern to everybody involved.
Officials here that have many years of experience in corrections, and I'd be glad to give this to them, but it's not normally, that's not a concern about people coming in, because they're coming in to visitation. If they're coming to visitation to see a family member, yeah, they may be trying to bring contraband in, but they're going to a specific spot. They're not going to do a crime around the facility. You're not going to.
Yeah, we haven't experienced a lot of crime in those areas around our institutions. Most times the visitors come to visit the loved one in the institution, and they head back out. If anything, they may bring a boost to the economy. They may stop by and buy from the local stores or local restaurants here, but we have not seen a boost in crime in the areas around us.
Some of the questions go back to infrastructure. There was some specific questions. Can those be addressed? I mean, are we that far in the process? There's questions about how is sewer going to work? Is there going to be a sewer treatment plant? Are you going to try and run sewer to another facility? Are there answers to those questions yet?
There's 21 facilities in the system right now, and most of the larger units, of course, have their own wastewater plants, and we have our own water and wastewater. And so I'm sure that the professionals that looked at this site and they have got that figured out, how we would handle the wastewater there, but most of our facilities do their own wastewater.
So is this facility going to be one of those type of facilities that will be self-contained with their water and wastewater?
It is most likely that it will be self-contained. Yes, sir.
There was a question with regards to that. I'm not a sewer man, so I don't know how it works. There was concern with contaminating area property. I mean, you've got obviously a lot of farmland around there, you've got cattle around there, you've got streams. So that was a concern. How is runoff going to be affected? Is it going to be in our streams? Can you address that? I'm not a sewer guy, so I don't know the details of that. But
in general terms, I can, and I think that Director Payne might be able to add on to this, if not Chairman Magnus, but all wastewater treatment plants are regulated. They're licensed and there are requirements by the Department of Environmental Quality and Department of Energy. They review those on a regular basis to ensure that those facilities are within standards, within codes, and are operating accordingly, so they're mitigating the risk that you're referencing.
as far as the water, another concern that was brought up was drilling wells, or if you heard it in the opening statement, even if they have to do any dynamiting. There are several homes around there that are on wells. The concern is what happens to those. I mean, if there's dynamite work done, obviously that can affect the well. If there's more drilling done, it can pull what water's out there from some of the residents. How can we be assured that we're not gonna have that issue?
Well, clearly, when we get back to the design professionals and the construction companies that ultimately are awarded the contract to build this prison, but we're not here to do harm to community, and there would be no actions taken in the construction of this prison that would create harm to community or wells through the construction process.
So and you know how that works. I mean, so the flip side of that, if somebody would, I mean, if I own land right next to it, my concern is still going to be what happens if it does happen. Is there any recourse or is there any assistance if that was to happen because of what goes on there? Is that a fair question?
I think it's a fair question, and my presumption would be that there would be recourse. I don't know exactly what that is in the process, but clearly if there is harm done to adjacent properties that diminish in some way their ability to have that property in its original condition, and there is some expectation that that be cured.
Okay. Another point that was brought up, obviously a quiet, peaceful community. It's a rural area. That's why everybody that owns property around there had it, because they wanted to have that kind of lifestyle. So the concern is, and it's been brought up, I think, in the governor's interview I did with her, but the proximity of that is because of the privacy for it not to affect those surrounding areas. But those that live there obviously don't see it that way because you got a prison right in your adjoining property. So some of the concerns they have is that actually enough land to preserve the privacy they have right now? And I think that's a real concern, is are we going to have this massive prison that's going to be lit up at night, light up our whole country over here? Is it going to be, we got trucks running up down the highway all the time? How is that going to be affecting the lifestyle that's all they're invested in?
Couple of things with respect to that. With the construction of any development, again, whether it be a prison or a community of homes, infrastructure needs required to facilitate flow of traffic, the level of traffic, or will be evaluated if there are improvements necessary to mitigate that, to have proper roads, to ingress and egress to that facility. Then that will be part of the design and construction process that we would expect to complete, is simply to traverse people back and forth to that prison. As far as site location goes, the architect will have access to the property when they're designing this particular facility. They'll be engaged with members of corrections and the board of corrections to effectively design the facility and site the facility on that parcel of property that mitigates that to the degree possible, to reduce sight lines from homes as to where the prison is constructed, to the addition of tree lines if that's necessary, and the planting of trees that might reduce that, and as well as setting it back appropriately, again, siting it on the location on that particular piece of property that reduces those things to the degree that is possible.
There's another question that's been brought up about fire protection. Obviously, rural fire departments, they're volunteer fire departments. Are they going to be relied upon to handle any fire issues at the prison, or is the prison self-contained and has that kind of equipment to handle that?
I think it can go both ways, and I'll lean into Secretary Wallace and Chairman Magnus, but I think that to the degree that investment needs to be made into fire protection and fire service, that will be evaluated, and they believe that we do have prisons in the state of Arkansas that have self-contained fire service in the event that there isn't effective or enough services available in the community.
Yes, sir. And to answer that question, we have our own staff that help fight our fires. Now, if the fire is out of control, we may rely on some assistance from the community, but under normal circumstances, we take care of that ourselves.
Another question was brought up as far as medical care, and I don't know which side wants to handle that. Obviously, rural, small hospitals as well. We're talking about a city coming into the county now. Is that handled in-house? For most part, how does that work?
Yes, sir. We have a medical vendor who offers a full complement of services. There are emergency services that we can't take care of in-house, and we do have to take folks out who offers a full complement of services. There are emergency services that we can't take care of in-house, and we do have to take folks out to local community. But we have our own hospital. It's at the Ouachita Lumber Unit in Malvern. But each individual prison has its own infirmary. So everything that we can triage and handle in-house, that is the goal. The risks happen when you have to move folks out of the facility, so we try to keep them in our custody as long as possible. So yes, our goal is to handle all medical services in-house, and we do have a vendor that does that. Yes, that's dental as well.
Property values. If you own property around the prison, what have you seen? Are there records of what that does to property values? The concern is obvious. If I own property, if I own a house next to where a prison is built, my value of my property just automatically took a hit. As soon as it went on the news last week, my property is not worth what it was because who wants to be by a prison? Whoever would like to address that, can you help with that?
It's believed that there will be no diminishment in property values with the prison.
If I may speak a little to my personal experiences, I'm from Malvern. That's where I grew up. I lived there. My mom still lives there, and that's where the last major investment in the prison system happened, was in Malvern, Arkansas in 2003. My mom lived there. She still lives there, and it's less than 5 miles from where the facility sits now. I have a cousin that lives about 2,000 feet from the facility, and if the trees were cut down, you would be able to see it from her property. My dad had a small business that was about 1.5 miles from where the facility is located. It's pretty well in the center, well close to the center of town in Malvern, if you can think about it that way. And I do not believe there has been a negative impact. Now, we're 20 years down the road. I'm not sure what it was at that time. I was in college and going into law school.
Hey guys, anyway, let me address something. I was first elected in 2006. I was later went to the Senate, so I represented tobacco where I'm getting a lot of calls. So I want to tell you I tried to work on this issue in 2017 because we do have a crime crisis here. We do have an overcrowding crisis. At that time, the legislators wouldn't fund what we needed to fund to get taken. So this issue should, at that time, the legislators wouldn't fund what we needed to fund to get taken. So this issue should have been taken care of years ago before we got to this point. So we're talking about facilities and location. Let me give you the location of some figures that I've got. Right now you have 75 counties here in Arkansas. So I got the figures from the Board of Corrections, and we're talking about location, facilities. 8 counties, and some of these people have multiple convictions in other counties, but 8 counties make up about 67%, so almost 2 out of 3 in incarceration and backup are from only 8 counties. So that's why they want to put it here, because we're not taking care of the issue of the crime first. We're also going to try and dump everybody else's problem in these 8 counties, because if we don't take care of the crime, it doesn't matter. They're going to keep coming, and they're going to keep coming. And I tried, and this all started back in 2011 when the crime started getting worse. And Senator Suffield I was down there as reps, and they came up with a bill called the Public Protection Act. Let me tell you about the Public Protection Act. It was all about letting criminals out of jail early. So that's when this started. So the better something sounds from the government a lot of times, the worse it's going to be. I can trust you about that. Shelby gave a little past history, so I've been down there a while and I've been around a while, but for 8 years, the #1 person that was supposed to address the crime problem here in Arkansas that everybody turned to, a bunch of legislators voted with, was a guy named State Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. You know where State Senator Jeremy Hutchinson is right now? He's sitting in federal penitentiary. So some of us have tried to address this back then and take care of it money-wise. We got to this point. But let me give you a little bit of money about the facilities, because you're talking about all these things that were built. So when I worked on it in 2007, obviously prices were a lot less then. And I found a way to try to fund it, but they once again rejected it. A lot of the people that are pushing this on you are the same people that's caused this crisis. To try to fund it, but they once again rejected it. A lot of the people that are pushing this on you are the same people that's caused this crisis. So if you look at facilities, for example, okay, so Alabama is trying to get done with a 4,000 bed prison. It's $1.25 billion, okay? They're not done yet. Alabama is trying to get done with a 4,000 bed prison. It's 1.25 billion, okay? They're not done yet. So you look at that per bed, that's about 300,000 per bed to build that prison down there. If you look at Utah, for example, that just got done with a 2,600 bed prison, it's about 275,000. They went over $1 billion. They first promised it was going to cost 650 million. They went over by almost double. So this last session, when they needed to address it, which it's got to be addressed, okay? There's a complex series of issues here that need to be addressed here that this is not going to solve in the end. And that's the crime first to begin with. But if you look at the figures the governor's office gave at the time, which I said was crazy, is that they said, and Mr. Fury said, that they were going to build a 3,000 bed prison for $470 million. I'm a simple-minded country boy, but that's about $156,000 per bed. That's almost, it's going to cost almost double in these other ones. So something is not adding up. So number one, I asked for the board, and I appreciate Benny Magnestein, we've known each other for 20 years, to at least delay their advancement in this till, and on there's a series of meetings that happen up here with the local people that you deserve the right to know what's going on.
Yes.
The second thing that needs to be addressed, I've asked the governor's office, and I sent the email to the kids that work in the governor's office. I said, the second thing that needs to be addressed, I've asked the governor's office, and I sent the email to the kids that work in the governor's office. I said, you need to produce, how did you come up with this $470 million figure? Because this is not just a Franklin County issue, this is the state of Arkansas. And I'll tell you, they went over budget on everything down there. So I need to know, Mr. Fury, and these people need to know, where did you come up? I want the specifics of what you're going to build, what kind of prisons you're going to build for $470 million, and tell me how you're going to do it at half the cost of Utah and Alabama.
I very much appreciate the question and recognize your concern in comparison. I can't speak to Utah, I can't speak to Alabama and their cost overruns with regards to their facilities. There could be a lot of things that go into that, which are change orders, escalation of cost. I can tell you that there's $330 million that has been set aside for prison construction. There's $75 million in reserves. We are currently working with an owner's representative that's been hired, and we will build the most cost-effective prison that we can. One of the processes that you go through is to achieve your budget is to review your current state of corrections and what the needs are. How many cells do you have? How many open dorms do you have? And what kind of buildings do you need? Do you need brick and mortar concrete buildings? Do you need metal buildings? What's the custody level that you're going to put in there? These are things that the owner's rep that's been hired will work with the corrections and the board of corrections to assess the current state of corrections to determine what the needs are for classification and custody level and what type of prison will be built, and that will inform the budget.
Let me answer that real quick. It's somebody been down there. Let me just tell you, they should have came up with this the first time when they sold the legislators. I don't go out in construction business when I used to work for it, or have something built and not have details. They provided no details. So right now, they should be able to provide us everything that they said they were going to do back during the session that was going to cost $470 million for 3,000 beds. Now, if we beat Alabama on this would be the only time we beat Alabama in anything a long time. And I can tell you right now, they're providing no details of this. If you're going to sell the legislature, you're going to sell the people of Arkansas, you need to provide what in the world did you come up with that figure that is almost half the cost. Utah, for example, said originally $650 million. They're over $1 billion. We don't know what's coming and what's happening. Like I said, there is a complex set of issues here that is not being addressed as this prison. You look at almost 60-something% of these inmates are coming from only 8 or 10 counties. So if you're going to come and stick this on the people there or a problem that is other, most of the rural counties are not having the big issues that you're having. So this is a Pulaski County problem that has created this. This has been legislated. So before you keep permit, you need to go back to 2003. And if you're going to give the legislature and us some figures, I want details of where you came up with that and what you were going to build in. and then to give the legislature and us some figures. I want details of where you came up with that and what you were going to build in, and then the people can see, and enough people can be smart enough to see, how in the world are you able to do that?
Now, let me tell you, one of the biggest mistakes of this meeting tonight is that it wasn't held a month ago, because we should have had this a month ago. And I'm not sure, and I've known Benny Magnus for a long time, and I've known Lindsey Wallace and Dexter and Mr. Fury. I've known him since he's come here. And Mr. Fury talked about, they kept this a secret because they didn't want someone outbidding them and causing their cost to go up on the land. What about the loss of values of the people that live here, their property? Because I asked the staff of the governor that morning, and Mr. Fury, you came in right at the end of the meeting, but I had already asked them, would they build a house next to this facility if we gave you the land? All of them said no. So, one of the fundamental principles that has made this country the country that it is, the greatest country on the face of the earth, is transparency among the government and the people. We are the government. We work for these people. The government works for us. And they've got everything backwards. And this has been going on for a long time in this country, not just this state. The people's voice, and nothing can happen without the consent of the government. And that's us. And they've taken away the voice of the people, and there was no reason. I have chaired the charitable penal committee for 12 years. It's over all the prisons. And when you don't even notify the chair of the committee that's over all the prisons about a project of this size, we've got a lack of transparency between government and the people. I'm interested in hearing some more answers to some of these questions, because I don't think we've got near all the information we have. And by the way, before we leave tonight, I would like to ask Mr. Magnus and Lindsey and Dexter, are you familiar with Arkansas Code 1225-101? Before we adjourn, I want to read Arkansas statute 1225-101.
Just want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
So listen, I think you brought up a good question real quick. And maybe the governor's office, since you guys are as public, that is concerning that our elected officials that are here to represent us knew nothing about that. Gary's over the prisons and knew nothing about this. I think that, from the public standpoint, and that's concerning. You know, can we address that? Is there a way to address why the elected officials, those that are representing the people here, knew nothing about that, weren't included in that? And I understand what you're saying about building up the bidding, but still, that they're the ones that are elected to represent us. He's over the prisons and yet knew nothing about it. That's concerning.
Again, fair point. Our concern was the price of the land escalating based on the amount of knowledge that would be out there.
That's bull.
For that reason, we kept it close hold, so not to pay more than the price was worth, ultimately, knowing what was going in there. And the elected officials were informed days before we closed on the property.
So I guess there's nothing illegal about that, evidently. But is that a common practice, so they don't get involved in the end? I mean, you wouldn't. If the tables were turned, you wouldn't want. You wouldn't want to be in that situation.
Well, I think it can be a common practice, and ultimately, what we were looking at was to make sure that the price of the land didn't escalate, and that we were good stewards of the taxpayer dollars to make sure that we didn't pay more for the land than it was worth.
Hold on a second.
Moving forward, we will have coordination with the community. This conversation doesn't stop here. This conversation continues through the design and the construction of this process, not only with elected officials, but also with the community. This is just the beginning.
So are there hard numbers for the price of the prison? I mean, are we confident with some numbers like Mr. King pointed out? Are there hard numbers right now, or are we just estimating?
There's hard numbers associated with the amount of money that's been set aside for this prison, which is $330 million, and then 75 that's already been set aside in reserves. The cost of the prison outside of that is unknown because it hasn't been designed yet. Ultimately, as I indicated, we will begin the process of the owner's rep engaging with the Department of Corrections to determine what the needs are to facilitate the construction of the prison. Depending on what you're building, that informs the cost. If you build 3,000 single cells in a particular location, the cost escalates very high, quickly. If you build something other than that, dormitory style settings and different construction materials, then that can inform the cost. So we can talk about what kind of money's been set aside. Ultimately, the end result of what the cost of the prison will be determined based on what the needs are and ultimately what the budget is.
Mr. Magnus, do you have something on that?
I want a statement to the fact that I think Director Payne also sure we had some numbers comparing Utah. I walked the new prison of Utah. It's been a day out there with it. Mr. Payne and myself and some others went to Lincoln, Utah. And then, but one of the things that Mr. Perfia is trying to explain is it depends on how most of the Utah facility, number one, is a hardened facility, a very hardened facility. Number two, it has a hospital with it. So when you try to compare a prison that does not have a hospital in it, and depending on how you harden the facility, that increases your cost a lot. There's one other thing that I would like to say, and it's not going to be welcome very much, but I want to say some advantages. And the advantages, most of the people, there's people in this building right now that are against the prison. Mark my word, some of you or some of your families will work at that facility. I live near Calico Rock, and I know, I experienced it. Number two, the advantages to us is we'll have several regional groups. And those regional groups will go out and work on your rodeo grounds, your parks, all throughout the community. We send inmates out every day. Well,
guys, let him finish.
Listen, I understand the thought process of coming here a lot more than you all think that I do. But I can tell you right now, if we announced we were moving out of Calico Rock, we'd almost have the gymnasium there full, ask us to stay. That's a reality.
And Mr. Magnus, you mentioned hardened when you were talking about the prison there a minute ago. What's that? Hardened, what do you mean by that?
Again, most of our facilities have the school inside the hardened complex. This may be a choice not to put the school in the hardened part.
Hardened
means single-man cells or two-man cells instead of 50-man barracks. It depends on how you build a facility on what the cost is.
What kind of prisoners will be housed here?
If I may, Mr. Magnus, jump in there as well. I think one of the other points to consider with regards to budget is...
What kind of prisoners will be housed here?
If I may, Mr. Magnus, jump in there as well. I think one of the other points to consider with regards to budget is...
What kind of prisoners will be housed here?
If I may, Mr. Magnus, jump in there as well. I think one of the other points to consider with regards to budget is,
What kind of prisoners will be housed here?
if I may, Mr. Magnus, jump in there as well. I think one of the other points to consider with regards to budget is activities that inform outcomes. And there's no more expensive citizen in any state than a justice-involved citizen. So if we build a modern prison that informs better outcomes and reduces our recidivism rate, not only is there a cost savings with respect to that $30 million that we're spending in the county jails currently to house state prisoners, but presumably we will have better outcomes with those individuals in our care, custody, and control, that when they do get out, they don't recidivate, and that is a cost savings to taxpayers that is exponential.
One of the questions was what level of prisoners will be housed here? Lynn, can you answer that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What type prisoners will be housed here? Is this going to be high security prison? Is this going to be a minimum security, death row?
No. Our death row offenders are housed at Barnard Supermax. So, and that's kind of what Mr. Magnus was alluding to the type of facility, the hardened facility. All of our facilities are not maximum security facilities. We have some community correction centers that house nonviolent, non-sexual offenders. We have some minimum security offenders where, depending upon what their custody classification is, so when an offender comes into our system, they are assessed. We look at their criminal history, we look at whatever their background is. If they have drug issues, if they have any sort of mental health issues, any sort of programming needs, we take all of those into consideration, along with what their risk is, what level of class they are based on the type of crime that they commit, and then we determine whether they're a minimum, medium, or high risk.
So what will be housed at our prison?
Well, that is where Veneer will come in, and that they will help us assess our current situation, our current facility footprint, and help us determine what's needed.
So the answer is we don't know.
Correct.
Just say that. They don't know. So that means
I have a question for Mr. Magnus. When was the board notified of this location?
Myself was notified 2 weeks ago today.
So you knew about it about 11 days before we did?
2 weeks from today, I was met by governor's staff at the North Central unit and went over the documentation for the unit.
And Mr. Porfiry, when was the decision made on this location?
July.
The search for property was ongoing for months. The decision to purchase this property, we optioned it 90 days prior to closing.
3 months. Gary.
3 months prior to closing on the property. 3 months.
So there was a report this afternoon that the prison board is meeting tomorrow to vote on this. Is that a false statement or is that a true statement? That is. You'll meet tomorrow to make a decision on proceeding. Is that the final step then? Once that vote is done, is that, and then it's a done deal and we're moving on? What is, go ahead. So, Gary Judson.
I would like to read this. I would like to read this because this came from, IFOI, a lot of information from the governor's office and Department of Corrections. Let me read this to you. This is Arkansas statute 1225.
Hey, Gary, hold that closer to you.
Okay. No state agency, board, commission, or governing body of any municipality or county shall approve the location or construction of any community-based residential facility housing juveniles, adults, adjudicated or convicted of any sexual or violent offense or any other offense that would constitute a Class C felony or higher, even if the facility otherwise conforms to the applicable zoning ordinances until a public hearing is conducted in the municipality or the county of the proposed location of the facility at least 30 days prior to the contracting of any property on in which to locate the proposed facility or existing structure in which to locate the proposed facility by the owner, operator, or care provider of the proposed facility by the owner, operator, or care provider of the proposed facility. No community-based residential facility housing juveniles or adults adjudicated or convicted of any sexual violent offense or any other criminal offense that would constitute a Class C felony or higher shall be located or constructed within any municipality or county of the state until a public hearing is conducted in the municipality or county of the proposed location of the state until a public hearing is conducted in the municipality or county of the proposed location of the facility at least 30 days prior to the contracting for the acquisition of any property on which to locate the proposed facility or any existing structure in which to locate the proposed facility by the owner, operator, or care provider. All residents within 1,000 feet of the proposed location of the facility shall be notified by mail at least 10 days prior to the day of the hearing. That is also notified by mail at least 10 days prior to the day of the hearing. That is called law. So, before this thing can even proceed, I think the board needs to check with the AG and see if there's not any Arkansas statutes being violated here. Because you don't want statutes being violated here. Because you don't want statutes being violated here. Because I don't think the board wants to spend the next 2 or 3, 5 years in litigation over this when there are other counties that say we will take it.
So we've got our elected officials here. What's the next step? This is way above my pay grade, so if we violate that, who handles that? Or who do we go to next?
I got a call from the Department of Corrections and the Bureau of Legislative Research this afternoon. It said most of the information, they have 3 days to respond to an FOI request. And I got email as I was driving from Little Rock this afternoon. It said they have quite a bit of that information available. I will pick that up first of next week and be going through that to make sure that everything is transparent. And I want to know what went on between the governor's office and the Department of Corrections during that whole thing.
Back up to what Mr. McCreary said. He said we have hard money that's put aside, $330 million, $75 million. But what he didn't back up was how they came up with the figure in the first place. Okay, remember that, folks. Because what's going to happen is that they're going to try and say, oh, you just don't want this, you don't want this, we've got to take care of this place. Okay, remember that, folks. Because what's going to happen is that they're going to try and say, oh, you just don't want this, you don't want this, we've got to take care of this problem place. Okay, remember that, folks. Because what's going to happen is that they're going to try and say, oh, you just don't want this, you don't want this, we've got to take care of this problem that they actually and didn't do anything about for several years. So they need to provide the hard problem that they actually and didn't do anything about for several years. So
They need to provide the hard figures and where they came up with $470 million that they're going to build a 3,000 bed prison. Mr. Fury tells me he doesn't know where they come up. Mr. Magnus has told me he doesn't know where they come up with. If they didn't tell us the truth, they can't do it. Folks, this thing is over budget before a shovel even goes in the ground. There is nobody in the Kentucky shovel even goes in the ground. There is nobody in the United States of few. I work on this issue. Says there's no way, there is any way that this is going to happen. So what that's going to do is the $470 million that they acted like they had, it's going to affect education in Arkansas. What the people of Arkansas need to know to do is the $470 million that they acted like they had, it's going to affect education in Arkansas. What the people of Arkansas need to know is, and if they can't tell you the truth or know the figures or lie to you on the front end, then how can you trust them on any type of process? And if they can't tell you the truth or know the figures or lie to you on the front end, then how can you trust them on any type of process in there?
Let's go back to the vote. Hold on. Hey, take a breath. Let's go back to the vote, because to me that's important right now, because I think we need, the question would be, based on what Gary's brought up, based on the concern of not having a 30-day period from the Arkansas law, is there a way to postpone a vote? Based on the concern of not having a 30-day period from the Arkansas law, is there a way to postpone a vote on this law? Give time for us, obviously, to figure out what's going on with that law. Is there a way to not vote on this tomorrow?
As chairman of the Board of Corrections, it's my prerogative is when to set the vote. And I'll set it for in the morning and call for that. We have several items on the agenda, and we will vote tomorrow on this property.
So the answer is no, you're not postponing.
Let me say this, as a legislator that's been down there, yes, this shouldn't be the stop of the process. Basically, we're coming up on a session. They're trying to nail the coffin on this thing as quickly as they can, because they know this legislative session, they can't answer the budget figures, okay? They can't provide the money, they can provide the details. They already know that they're not going to stay on that. So what we need to do is wait till this next legislative session, at least give everybody a fair chance to know. And so yes, there could be changes in laws that's going to do this. We still don't know. We're starting a legislative session just a month and a half from now. There is nothing wrong with wait till the legislative session. Get the real figures of what this is going to cost before the taxpayers get stuck with it.
Mr. Eubanks?
It's my understanding that the legislature is going to have to give some sort of approval on this at some point. ADFA, the Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration, that is the entity that made the purchase. The legislature has to approve the transfer of that property from them to the Board of Corrections or Department of Corrections. So this is not over.
Mark, I have a question for Mr. Magnus. I don't think it's been answered. I know we're voting tomorrow. What time are we voting tomorrow? What time is your meeting, sir?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. In the light of this new statute, Senator, and I just asked the Senator, and I don't know if he can do it, but I asked him to see if he could file an injunction to stop that process until this is over.
Gary, is that something that can be done?
Well, it's something I surely can contact the Attorney General and see if we can get an injunction filed. To hold it back. I want to see if what they have already done is illegal. Because according to this law, they have not followed the laws of the state of Arkansas. So.
And that's what you read, was law.
Exactly. That's a statute from the state of Arkansas.
If I may address the statute that Senator Stubblefield mentioned, the Board of Corrections legal counsel as well as my legal counsel are here tonight, and they looked at this and they do not believe it to be applicable. Because if I may finish, it talks about community-based residential facilities, and those are not traditionally what a prison is defined as. So they do not believe, and of course, we're happy to communicate with whomever we believe we need to, but they do not believe that to be applicable to the Department of Corrections.
So Mark, I think, in their opinion, but I think we need another opinion. Whether it's all statute. So I don't see my prosecuting attorney. Is Jeff Phillips here tonight? Mr. Phillips, I was just asked the question by Mr. Eubanks here, if we could file an injunction in Franklin County, asking for these proceedings to be halted until we have the opportunity to review the statute. Where you at, Jeff?
He said he doesn't know the answer, just haven't heard that statute.
Sounds like you could have a late night, sir, like I've had here lately.
That's the judge of Franklin County.
Jeff, if you don't mind, we get your mic, or if you don't mind, come on out, so that we can hear you. This is our prosecuting attorney for Franklin Johnson Polk County.
So this is the first I've heard of this. I just came here to see how this was going to shake out. Now I'm pulled in here. I'm open to any suggestion to try to make sure due process is established and that the rules are followed. It sounds like the prison board have their attorneys on this and have analyzed it. I mean, I don't know how long this statute that was quoted has been looked into and researched. I have no problem doing that tonight, but an injunction would probably have to go through Pulaski County by 9 o'clock in the morning. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. So if that's the case,
I believe we changed that they don't have to be filed in Pulaski County anymore. I think we can do it in our local counties, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Now, I'm almost sure we changed it where everything don't have to be filed in Pulaski County. I think it can be filed here. I think we can look and get with you early in the morning and let you know, but yeah, I think we changed that where everything doesn't have to be filed in Pulaski County.
it's going to be a late night, and I've had a few.
Is there anything else any of you guys want to add, or any other questions you want to hit before? I mean,
I think we've covered them.
We've hit the questions that have been sent in. I mean, obviously it's concerning that you guys didn't know about it. I think that's a major concern. It's concerning the prison board wanting to hold off a little bit based on what's been said here tonight. That's a little concerning. And I mean, there's just several things that make you worried about what's going on. Thank you guys. Is there anything you guys want to add before? I mean, I think we've covered it. We can start this in and work our way down the table and make sure we finish it up. And we got a closing comment.
Well, I certainly want to thank you for the opportunity to be in front of you tonight and have this conversation. As I said before, this conversation will continue throughout this entire process. And thank you for allowing us to be here tonight.
Representative King, you got it.
Well, I just want to add one thing. So we talked about how business, you have to not know, and that's business, that's not government. Okay, our founding fathers set up a system where they didn't get things crammed down their throat, and they believed that the local people should have a voice. So if they want to continue that, they need to go over here to the civics teacher and tell them we're in a communist country, not an American democracy. That people
Mark, I believe the only thing that I want to do as authority of the county judge if I have this authority with our prosecuting attorney, Jeff Phillips, I'd like to verbally ask you, if at all possible, to get an injunction in front of a circuit judge in the morning for us before 9 o'clock, please. You get the paper to sign, and I'll sign it.
Gary, anything else you want to ask?
I just learned that there's 4 members of the prison board here, so I'd like for them to stand just for a minute because they're making a big decision of pushing something on a community and then going to make them pay for it on top of that. So if you're a member of the prison board, would you please stand up?
Now we'd like to take a picture of it.
Mark, that's all I have.
Thank you for what you've done. Appreciate it. Anybody from the prison board, anything you guys else you want to add? I don't want to shut her down before give you opportunity. So no chance holding off, Mr. Mayor. We can't hold off. No chance of that. No.
Railroaded.
That's right. I believe we'll wrap up with that. We've got a closing statement though. Mr. Don Sosby has some things he'd like to say as we wrap up.
Hello, folks. I was once called Don Sosby. Now I'm just Cody's dad. I've lived in Arkansas all my life. I love the state. I've lived in this area for about 60 years. My family has spent that 60 years putting together what little real estate we have. We border this piece of property on the south side. We border this piece of property on the north side. We have got arrangements made for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. We're just small ranchers. We're not in any way elected officials. We're just working people. We hate to give this up. At the time we started buying this property and trying to pay for it, which took a long time, we didn't have any idea anyone would want to put a prison on this old rocky kind of soil. In my 82 years, I have worked in quite a few prisons. I have been called at different times to bring my horse, my dogs, help gather cattle on the prisons in Arkansas. In that time, and part of the prisons in Oklahoma. In that time, I kindly figured out how to make a prison partly pay for itself without all of the money coming out of the taxpayers of our great state. I've been told that this prison that they're wanting to put on this little small 800 rocky acres will not have any way in this world to help pay for itself, except out of the pockets of the working people of Arkansas. And that's the people I'm looking at. Not only that I hate for this thing to go in because of our property and where we live, and the work we put into it. But I also hate to see the great people of our great state have to pay for this thing for year after year after year. After it's established and after they get prisoners in it, there will be no end to what the taxes will be. And that's besides changing our great community from what it is right now. Whenever this prison gets full of convicts, and these convicts' families start moving around and coming in and wanting to live close to the prisons so they can visit with the people that's there, you won't be able to let your little children stand down at the road and catch the bus. You won't be able to say, hey, the bus is going to run. You kids will be home 30 minutes before I can get off work. Just go watch TV or something. You won't be able to do that because of the quality of people that will live in this area. We have the best little area here that I know of in the state of Arkansas. We also have the best people that I know of in the state of Arkansas. And I really think that the decisions that's made right now will cost our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, it will cost them the rest of their life. And there's no telling